In the public eye, Washington champions peace, advocating for ceasefires in conflict zones like Gaza and Ukraine. Yet, behind the scenes, its actions often tell a different story. While Americans overwhelmingly support de-escalation, U.S. policies frequently obstruct ceasefire agreements, prioritizing strategic interests over diplomacy. In Gaza, unconditional military aid to Israel perpetuates violence, undermining peace efforts. In Ukraine, the U.S. eyes vast deposits of rare earth minerals and energy resources, shaping its involvement in ways that complicate conflict resolution. This duality, public rhetoric versus covert strategy, reveals a calculated balancing act that raises questions about Washington's true commitment to global peace. Welcome to In Depth.
Donald Trump is his name, he's there to stay.
As unlikely, impossible is now reality.
America powerful. We will win, win, win. And we will make America great again. We will very quickly make America great again.
President Donald Trump's promise to swiftly end the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East faces significant challenges. According to Financial Times, following a conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Trump claimed a contract for peace was progressing despite Putin rejecting a recent ceasefire proposal. This call occurred after a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas collapsed, with Trump's officials previously aiding negotiations. Putin only conceded a limited truce regarding energy targets. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky agreed to a U.S. proposal to halt attacks on Russian energy infrastructure, but demands additional steps. In the Middle East, U.S. talks shifted suddenly, leading to renewed instability. Analysts warn Trump's negotiating style is clashing with the harsh realities of these conflicts. The recent Israeli missile strike on Gaza has sparked intense grief and frustration among many Arab Americans in the Detroit area. New York Times stated that a pervasive feeling of abandonment has emerged as community members express anger towards both major political parties for neglecting their concerns, particularly regarding Gaza. Disillusionment with the Biden administration has led some to shift their support towards Trump, although his foreign policy is now viewed unfavorably, even by some of his previous supporters. Many still feel obstructed for their political choices and voice collective discontent with the lack of attention to their plight. Amid growing tensions, there is a shared sentiment that the political landscape is failing to address their urgent needs in the face of ongoing violence.
In the theater of global diplomacy, Washington often presents itself as a champion of peace. However, its actions in Gaza and Ukraine during the current administration reveal a stark contrast between public declarations and strategic maneuvers. In Gaza, the U.S. publicly supported peace and humanitarian efforts, aligning with public opinion favoring aid to Palestinian civilians. Trump's role in brokering a ceasefire initially appeared to be diplomatic triumph. However, unwavering military and economic support for Israel undermined ceasefire negotiations. The administration prioritized bolstering Israel's security, viewing it as a critical ally. As violence resumed, the U.S. blamed Hamas while endorsing Israel's military response, sidelining calls for de-escalation, even during the former administration, which used vetoes at the United Nations to block resolutions aimed at halting violence. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, Washington similarly projected itself as a peacemaker. Trump's administration touted progress toward a limited ceasefire with Russia, yet this fell short of broader peace aspirations. Critics argue that his peace overtures masked strategic interests since Ukraine's rich mineral and energy resources presented opportunities for U.S. corporate gains. By obstructing comprehensive ceasefire agreements or weakening military aid commitments, the administration ensured prolonged instability, an environment ripe for exploiting Ukraine's economic vulnerabilities. The double standard becomes glaring when comparing these conflicts. In Gaza, U.S. support for Israel perpetuated violence under the guise of defense. In Ukraine, military aid was framed as essential for peace but fueled prolonged warfare. This duality underscores a broader truth. U.S. foreign policy frequently prioritizes geopolitical advantage and its pursuit of strategic dominance over genuine conflict resolution, leaving lasting scars on the regions it claims to support.
As Washington's words of peace echo across the globe, its actions in Gaza and Ukraine whisper a different tale. Behind the scenes, strategic interests often overshadow diplomatic rhetoric, leaving many to wonder what lies beneath the surface of America's foreign policy. For more analysis, we're joined by Dr. Ashraf Singer, world politics analyst from Cairo, and we're also joined by Mr. Ivan Yuaz, an advisor at Ukraine National Center from Kiev. Good morning and welcome. And I would start with Dr. Singer. Now, Dr. Singer, how does unconditional U.S. support for impact prospects for peace negotiations with the Palestinians?
One of the major foreign policy approach by United States is what we call it the kinetic diplomacy, or kinetic, warfare. This is the term that United States can really impose sanctions and even strike some goals. At the same time, they are performing diplomacy at the same time. So this type of action really used by the White House, and I can see clearly that Israel is copying, this term now, or this type of diplomacy, where they can really use the diplomacy at the same time they really hitting or impose sanctions on the other parties. The second point really very clear about the U.S. foreign policy now, in terms of dealing with Ukraine and Gaza, what we call it, the immoral politics. It means that you can't really find a place for the ethical, stance or ethical steps. But the United States is really controlled by its interest. Of course, this is right, that every country really pursue its interest. But the question now, how can really compare between the previous administration and the current administration about some standards and some specific issues? You can't really change your directions just in 1 second. This is can really create a confusion, and this is what happened in Ukraine and Russia war, where Europeans and United States in deep division about the future of Ukraine war, and what is the best course of action that Europe and United States should pursue against Russia, or to protect, the future peace under a clear condition, rather than increase that kind of pressure on Ukraine, not in Russia. And it seems to me like even after Trump did that call with Putin, still Russia and Ukraine, they exchange fire. For Gaza, it's really weird too, that is, you are talking, as US, you are talking about peace and diplomacy, and you are sending Witchkov and Adam Pollers, but at the you are giving Israel huge military aid, and both of these policies, can really create kind of division, outcry, kind of fusions for the future of peace in Gaza and Ukraine.
Yes. Mr. Yuaz, what are the broader geopolitical consequences of U.S. involvement in Ukraine's resources extraction, particularly with regards to U.S. relations with China and Europe?
Greetings to studio guests and all audience. Of course, when we're analyzing the approach of the United States, it seriously differs compared to previous administration. So under Biden, Ukraine received support from the United States, and it was clear that they defending the same values as Ukraine defend, and there was ideology of previous, as I said, administration. The ideology of current administration seriously differs. We understand that Trump needs fast decisions. Fast means not always good decisions, and that is the main problem. Because in Ukraine, we have a feeling that Donald Trump wants to receive Nobel Prize win for peace in Ukraine, and doesn't matter for him whether it will be just peace or not just, because in Ukraine we always said that we are not attacking Russia. It's Russia attack Ukraine. Russia start full-scale war. Russia committed more than 150 crimes and make a damage to Ukraine to more than $1 trillion for this 3-year full-scale war. That's why we need peace based on justice, means that Russia should first of all return to our territory, compensate financial losses. Unfortunately, they could not return human lives of all people murdered by them. And after that, we can start talks about normalization. For Donald Trump, it's a hard way. That's why he wanted to do something that will be easier to him. And he understands that it's easier to press on Ukraine than to press on Russia. That's why we see press on Ukraine to go to this deal. We will see what will be in 3 days in Jeddah in the talks between Ukraine and US and Russia. But now, of course, in Ukraine, we're a little bit scared about what we hear there. Thank you.
Yes. Dr. Singer, how does Washington's public rhetoric of supporting peace in conflict zones like Gaza and Ukraine actually square with its actions that seemingly obstruct ceasefire agreements or prolong the conflicts?
This is one of the major critiques, by many American diplomats and even many great scholars, think tanks in the United States, in terms of what, how Washington public support for peace, but at the same time, we watching and transferring of arms to the conflict zone like Gaza, or in particularly giving Israel unlimited, support of military aid. It's really important to frame, your foreign policy or the American foreign policy about, the people, about humanitarians, concern, about the international and promoting, global stability. This is what really our expectation from the foreign policy. But that kind of changing of these directions, rather than to be pro peace, mean that it should be like fair and balanced situation, or giving or calling, like the great mediator where the third party should be. But unfortunately, United States was and is standing with Israel or with Netanyahu wars, and this is, of course, will not really serve the U.S. interest of making, the Middle East is a great place to be stable. Of course, Middle East is holding and hosting, like the Ukrainian, Russians, talk about future peace in Ukraine. But it's really important that is you need really to solve both of two issues based on, I would say, the condition that can really please Ukraine and please Gaza, or please Palestinians too. So giving, that kind of direction of the U.S. diplomacy or talk or pressure on Gazans or Ukrainians will not, of course, serve the stability for long term. But the point of about, as I said before, the morality and the ethics of Europe, of the U.S. foreign policy. So it seems to me like Donald Trump is really punishing Biden policy, that it doesn't matter what was or what were, the stance of United States under Biden's position in Ukraine and Gaza. For example, it was clear in Ukraine, but it wasn't really clear in Gaza under Biden. But both of Biden and Trump were supporting Israel, and this is cannot really serve the peace in the Middle East. But of course, we are waiting, to see that Trump really giving a good support to Ukraine that can really make a good peace or a great peace with Russia and create stability in Russia, Ukraine war.
Yes.
War.
Mr. U.S., how does Washington's role in Ukraine's resource exploitation shape the global perceptions of U.S. intentions and priorities in international conflict zones?
So about Ukrainian resources, first of all, about rare earth minerals, prehistory of that question, that approximately in October 2024, the month before elections for the president in the United States, in Ukraine, we have a clear understanding that for Donald Trump, it will be not interesting to help Ukraine, to actually have the same attitude as his predecessor Biden had. That's why Ukraine think about idea, what can interest him. And Ukraine proposed the idea about rare earth minerals. But rare earth minerals, it's a good topic, but it's not investigated at all. For understanding what actual rare earth minerals have Ukraine, in what quantity, we need at least $25 million to organize that research, according to statement of the former Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lana Zerkal, in Ukraine. So that's why Ukraine needs this as a topic, but as a topic that we could exchange for preserving their support. Donald Trump, as a businessman, said that, okay, I need your rare earth minerals, but I don't want to give you something in exchange. It is a pro. And its approach of US in the global policy. So that's why now we have discussions. And now, as I said, I think that the fast decision that Trump thinks hardly happened in Ukraine. And I think that now in the nearest days, we will try to explain to him, even at this meeting in Jeddah next, that his proposition about ceasefire, of course, is good, but it hardly to lead to some sustainable peace, as he said, because I think that one of the main problems of US that in their vision, they don't take into account reality on the field and specificity of every country. They have some idea and want to implement it. But unfortunately, we have historic experience and actually a very big problem of the United States. It's a very modern country. They appeared only in the 18th century. They don't understand countries with a long history, and in Ukraine, at least, we see that. I think that in Gaza is the same situation. They can check out history in Middle East that starts 1,000 years before Ukraine, actually. And it's a reality in which we live now. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Singer, how does Washington's stance on ceasefire affect its credibility and trustworthiness among international parties?
So the international partners really are not really understanding, the U.S. foreign policy, particularly in Gaza or even in Ukraine. As my guest, said, or my colleagues said that, for the mineral agreements, and the United States, need really to get access to the Ukrainian resources. I would say, okay, this is fine, that you can really give me something, what we call it tit for tat. I would love, to make that kind of contract or agreement with the United States as a Ukrainian people. They need really to build like that kind of project of discovering and increase the, I would say the payoff or the benefit for the U.S. and Ukraine. But it's really hard that you can convince Ukrainians that I would get access to your resources without giving any protection or support from threatening policy of Russia. This is one of the major problems here. Second major problem with the military-industrial complex. That the international players, all of them, they need really to see what really the plan of United States is, just to sell arms without really getting like a degree of stability if we really supporting your alliance by selling that arms either for Ukraine or for any major alliance in the global politics. So if I'm selling arms, I need really to make sure that I'm offering the terms, but not really making a concession with my rival. And this is one of the major problem at the international community is watching the United States now under Trump. What is the best course of action? What is the best policy that the United States need really to make that balance between you need really to get resources from the international community and what we call it, the dilemma of the public commons or the dilemma of commons, where the public goods, pretty open for any major powers need really to intervene and invade to make a control. And this is one of the dilemma of Ukraine. That is, if Ukraine is not under United States, so maybe the minerals in Ukraine will be under Russia or under China. So I understand Trump needs really to control the minerals in Ukraine for potential and future rising of any major powers. But I need really to understand what is the best course of action that the United States should really take towards, Ukraine and securing
Clear stances, yes.
Ukraine and increase the degree of stability in Europe.
Yes. Well, that was Dr. Ashraf Singer, world politics analyst. Thank you so much. And Mr. Ivan Newes, advisor at Ukraine National Center. Thank you, both of you, for your valuable insights. And caught between rhetoric and reality, Washington's peace narrative often veils strategic pursuits in Gaza and Ukraine. Its actions reveal a stark contradiction, obstructing peace to your influence and resources. This brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. I'm Hala Al-Hamalawi. Thank you very much for joining us, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.